recording on this computer.
So welcome to Sacred Circle Studio Presents. This initiatory offering is by my dear friend and powerful wisdom keeper, Reda Rackley. Born to parents in the Bible Belt in the Deep South, Reda grew up in the dirt, working in the tobacco fields right alongside her African-American neighbours. One day, a very old black woman sitting in the shade of the tobacco barn looked her straight in the eye and said, "You're going to remember what your grandpappy forgot." And she ran from that barn and eventually ran away from the Deep South and all of its secrets. But those secrets eventually led her to Mother Africa to attempt to reconcile the pain and legacy of her ancestors that bought and sold the enslaved Africans. She was blessed to meet an African elder that passed on his ancestors' wisdom and that allowed Reda to embrace her own Celtic ancestors' wisdom. And she now shares her offerings, sacred art, and deeply political social commentary as BoneWoman. So the Sacred Women's Circle is opening. Welcome, you beautiful women who hold the rim of the sacred circle. So let us begin by first acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands and seas of the world, past, present, and future. Let us begin to call across the circle through time and space to coo-wee across the ages. Let's do it together. Coo-wee! And to gather together our beloved ancestral sisters who have held the rim of the sacred circle before us. And so, a breath away through that veil, yes, just over there, our grandmothers, 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 mothers, daughters, aunties and sisterly friends beckon us. An invitation to pick up the thread of knowing. And as we create this initiatory space, the intention is to remember. And through this remembering, surrender those hindered parts of ourselves carried generationally along the thread of knowing. And through this sacred union, our ancient sisters remind us that they too have been bereft, where all expectations, what has been known, loved, or identified with, has fallen aside. To remember the promise made before we were born, never to forget her. And as our Indigenous sisters have reminded us, to love her, and to love her, the earth. Our call to be the hollow bone, to allow the wisdom of the ancients to become blowing through.
To become the hollow bone, old ones, I ask you to let this bell and rattle shake up this world and the other world, old ones. We call upon the spirits of this holy and sacred land, the native people that lived here in the very, very beginning, honoring the Coast-Minoan Indians, the Estelan Indians, the Ohlone Indians, greeting you and thanking you for allowing me to be the gatekeeper of this holy piece of land, old ones. I call upon the ancestors of my mothers and my grandmothers and of EJ's mothers and her grandmothers and all women through all time, all the women whose ears will lean in to listen to the words being spoken today. We call upon your grandmothers and your great-grandmothers and your great-great-great. Calling all of these grandmothers to circle around us so that the wisdom can be passed from one generation to the next, so that we can heal the sacred web of creation. I call upon the spirits of the great waters where we can return to the waters to dive down so deep to reclaim more of our beautiful soul, to go down to the depths, to bring back pearls, to bring back the beauty that lies in the darkness. And we come up And we are bright light, dancing with the dolphins and swimming with the whales. I call upon the spirit of Mama Waka to cleanse, to renew, to let us all be reborn during these times. I call upon the wisdom of the great trees. There are so many, but the baobab, the oak trees, the sequoia trees, there are so many I cannot name you, but we do know, old ones, that your roots are our roots and your branches are our branches, and we lift our hands to the heavens and to know that we are all a part of this great mystery. Old ones, I call upon the spirit that follows me and the spirit that follows DJ and the spirit that follows all of the women that are doing the sacred work these days, old ones. Let my tongue be your tongue. Let my body be the hollow bone to speak what needs to be spoken. In the name of healing, in the name of reconciliation, in the name of beauty and joy, I say Ashe.
Thank you, Bone Woman.
Yes.
It's lovely to have you here. So, previously on I Am a Circle, Part 2, the Sheroes journey, Sun Goddess has gone into hiding. The woman searches for the light and her sacred joy. In a sacred grove, the wisdom keepers have gathered, and they roll the large circular stone from the mouth of the Yggdrasil. The woman feels her way down, 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 guided by handprints on the red ochre walls, until she falls into the arms of her ancestors with her sorry ass trauma. The woman meets Fir Goddess, and the wasteland is transformed, and she ventures into the forest. The woman unlocks a secret and miraculously arrives at the Menders Door. The woman learns about aligning her beingness, the free will to unpick and refit earthly garment by herself. And then the woman continues her journey through the woods of no path.
Oh, Bone Woman. She saw the woman lying at the mouth of the cave. She looked dead cold, but she knew, Bone Woman knew she wasn't dead. Bone Woman knew she had stepped across the track. She had stepped across the crack of creation, the crack of eternity, where there was no beginning and there was no end. Once you step across that crack, remember, everything through all times and all places comes on into your bones. You see, you can see too much all at once, and your body and your soul and your spirit can't handle it, and you just have to go into a deep, deep sleep when you step across that crack of eternity. Old Bone Woman bent over the woman with her old creaking bones, and she pulled the woman deeper and deeper into the cave and got her back as far as she could go. And she laid her down on the earth, and she took off all those clothes that she'd been wearing for way too long, all those buttons, all those zippers. She'd been zipped up way too long. And old Bone Woman took those clothes and laid them in a bucket. She went down to the spring that was hidden in the back of the cave, and she put water in a bucket and she placed it on the fire. She let that water heat up real hot, and then she slowly took that bucket and went over to where the woman was, and she washed her body. She washed the dirt, she washed the grit, she washed the sweat, she washed the tears, she washed the blood, she washed and she washed and she washed, and then she got another bucket of hot water and she washed her hair, pulling the twigs and the sticks and the dirt out of her hair, and she took a comb made of shark's teeth and she combed all those tangles out. And the woman slept, never knowing that old Bone Woman was taking care of her. Then old Bone Woman, she went back and she got some more water from the spring and she mixed it with the red ochre, and she spread that red paint all over that woman's body, over every little part. And then she went and she got her goat skin bag, also hidden way back in the cave, and she pulled out bones from that bag. She pulled out bones from the original mother. She pulled out bones from the great, 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 great grandmothers. She pulled out all the bones of all women that had crossed the threshold, the ones who were no longer walking around in their skin. And she took those bones and she laid it around sleeping woman. And then she went to the top of the woman's head and she picked up the bone of the original mother and she began to sing, yeah, my, yeah, 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 yeah. And she shook that bone over that woman's body. And she sang over that woman. And all of a sudden, she began to see ravens flying out of that woman's body. And she kept on singing, Yamake, Yamake, Yama. And then she saw bats flying out of the woman's mouth. Hundreds of thousands of bats coming out of that woman's body. And she kept on singing, and one by one, she picked up each one of those bones and she sang over that woman's whole body. She kept singing, and then finally, she got in between the woman's legs and she started singing over her yoni. She started singing over her yoni, healing all the stories that lived inside of her yoni, healing the stories of her mother, healing the stories of her grandmother, healing the stories of her great. And she kept singing, and all of a sudden, a great serpent came out of that woman's body. And the old woman starts singing, and the great serpent slid around all those bones, and the great serpent slid between old woman's legs, and the great serpent encircled the woman. And then the old great serpent opened its mouth and said, she's healed. She is healed. Her mother is healed. Her grandmother is healed. Her great, 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 great grandmother is healed. And as soon as that serpent said that, the woman opened her eyes. And then old bone woman bent over her and said, you had to remember and you had to forget who you were and who you was before you came here. You ain't no more who that is. You will never be her again. So I take you to the spring of eternal life, and I wash this red paint off of you, and I wrap you in an old skin of my grandmother's, one that was worn 1,000 years ago. And we're gonna walk out of this cave, and you're gonna see the beginning, and you're gonna see the end. What you're gonna see is old Mama Gaia, who's waiting to pluck you up and place you in the tree of life, to know now the bone memory has been passed on to you, daughter. You now carry the memory of all of creation. And now you know you were simply here to walk with love coming out of your souls, out of your feet, out of your eyes, out of your hands, out of your heart. You have come here to make love to the Gaia, to the Mother Earth, to give back all that she has given. It is time now to give back to Gaia, because she has given and given, and now it is our turn to give back to her. One day, you'll come back to this cave, and you'll see how all the lines of all creation join together on the cave walls. You'll see all those paintings and all those drawings. They dreamed you on in. And that's the way it is in the time of no time. We go back to the beginning, which is the end, which is the beginning, which is the end.
I can hardly speak. I could feel the whole journey, Reda, BoneWoman, just permeating through my body, because I believe that I've been on that journey of transformation, and you have been on that journey of transformation, and we've had to live and breathe it, and now we connect with it very, very deeply. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. Reda and I met a long time ago, and I actually went to America and I stayed with her. So there is a deep connection. And I've got a Facebook page, Reda, if you'd like to talk about that, called BoneWoman. BoneWoman Speaks.
Yes, well, thank you, BJ. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be in sacred space with you right now and feeling what we felt when we were sitting in the circle of stones together, and just thanking you for all the medicine that you keep bringing to the world and the sacrifices that you have gone through to keep showing up to your beauty and to the gifts that you've come here to give away, so that you bring other women back to their gifts. And that truly is, for me, what BoneWoman Speaks is. It was a place that I opened up a sacred altar, a sacred shrine for women to bring their beauty, and for us to recognize each other's beauty, and to help each other bring forth our beauty, which is what we are doing right now. I totally believe that we each come into the world with a gift that we've come to deliver, and that many of us weren't welcomed with our gifts. And in fact, we were told to put our gifts away and to become someone we were not meant to be. And so my whole journey is really about taking the veils off of women, taking the veils off of the young women, the young girls, and seeing their gifts and saying, how can I, as an elder, how can I help you deliver your gifts? Because we are at a point now that we are totally redreaming this world. The old world is ending. She is ending. And what better way to redream it is through the gifts that we have come here each to deliver. And that's my purpose in life. That's why I have come here this lifetime, is to look into your soul and say, I see you, and then how can I help bring more of your magnificence, which is in some ways how you actually got to America, is in BoneWoman Speaks. I think I lined women up to support each other, and you and Edie hooked up, and that's how that happened. Yeah.
And so, Reda, how does mythological story relate to you? How do you see that as being important?
Well, myth is like a roadmap. It's like, we have mythologies from all cultures, and it's really a map. Because if you go back and look at the old stories, they were stories of initiation. It was stories of a trauma happened. You had to leave everything that you knew. You had to go into the dark forest. You had to face the shadows. You had to dive deeper into the darkness to bring back the gold that you then shared with the village. So myths are maps, and all of the images in there are archetypes, which are forever. They never go away. They're always present. Some archetypes are stronger at some times. The Great Mother can be more present in our lives, but then the Virgin can be more present in our lives. So for me, mythology truly is, it's the best way I can say, it's a map. And it tells us where we came from, and it tells us where we're going. And so we have, the myth of Inanna. I mean, like, the whole going down into the underworld, and this, like, we have all of these maps, and now is the time to pull on these maps and to use these maps and to read these maps, because we need
personally, Reda, when I you've inspired me greatly and encouraged me greatly to keep on writing and to explore these areas. And I didn't really know much about initially the hero's journey, and everything that I've done in the mythology that I've worked on has come completely naturally. I didn't study it. I mean, I always loved story, but I actually felt that it came very naturally to me when I started writing. And I didn't have a roadmap when I was growing up. I mean, I couldn't do the work that I do now when I was 20. There was just no way that I could have done it. Because it's my history and the trauma and the joy that informs my story. So it is a roadmap, and I wish I'd had that roadmap when I was younger. You know, when I think about, you know, the grief that I experienced as a young woman,
Right.
how, if I'd been given a roadmap, how different that would have looked.
Yes, yes. But the roadmap is in our bones. It's in us. It's our ancestral story. Like a lot of times when I'm divining and you know, I ask, well, who are your ancestors? And it's like, or even people that were adopted, like they know they may be Irish. I go, well, go back and dig up the old Irish stories. It's like, they're always there, but we have to excavate them now. We have to like take the layers off, was what I was saying, because they're always there. You were born with your grandmother's, your great-grandmother's, your great-great-grandmother's stories in your bones, and you're the one who chose to say yes to this heroine's journey, where many of our mothers and grandmothers did not. So, you know, and thank you for that. Thank you for that. We didn't know them, but they were in us, and that's what kept us alive.
Yeah, and it's I don't know. I mean, you work quite differently. We were talking about that before, because I have asked Reda if I may use the BoneWoman story in the Sheroes journey. And we were talking before, and it's quite a different process for the two of us. She said, I can't remember reading that, you know, I can't remember writing that story. And I had to think about it, and actually what it was that it was a download from you, spoken download, and I wrote it out.
Right.
And so that's how you work, is that you do it through opening up the portal and it coming through and you speaking it. Where for me, my background is different. I actually download, but not through speaking it.
Yes.
And then that opens a portal for me to write things coming from me. It's a different process altogether.
Totally. Yeah. But
so how did you discover that process? When did it kind of, all of a sudden, you realised that you had BoneWoman speaking?
You know, that she's been with me as long as I can remember. It's, you know, being in the woods in Georgia and walking around in the woods and climbing in holes in trees and diving into the springs. It's like, for me, it's like the ancient little people, it's the ancient invisibles. They have always been with me. And my job was simply to get out of my way. Just like with my paintings or dancing, I'm being danced and I'm allowing my body, which is very shamanic, I'm giving permission for the other world to use my body consciously. Maybe when I was very young, I wasn't so conscious about it now. But now, you know, when I shake the bell and rattle, it's a very specific invocation to open up one world to the other world. And saying, I'm willing to let my body be the hollow bone now. But it's always been with me. And my blessing is that I was able to find this African elder, Malidoma Somé, who helped me to ground it and understand it, and to know that it actually is from my ancestors, that it's a story, that it's a gift from my ancestors. It doesn't come from Africa, but it was an African elder teacher who taught me how to open up the gates.
And so, Reda, can you tell us a little bit about that journey that you took to Africa?
Um, yes, that was about 20 years ago, and it's a long story. So how do I? So I began working with Malidoma probably 20 something years ago, and was learning about the ancient art of cowrie shell divination and learning about rituals. And we were at a big gathering up in Mendocino area, and this man walked up to me and he looked at me and he said, he was in the group, he said, "I see your name is on a list to go to Africa." And I said, "I haven't put my name on a list to go to Africa." He goes, "Well, your name's on this list." I said, "I don't know anything about that." And so like it was like all of a sudden this snowball event happened where Malidoma came up to me and said, "You've been tapped and it's time for you to go." And so I began a year-long preparation to make the journey to Africa. When I got to Africa, there were a lot of diviners, medicine people who then divine if you're to be initiated into this medicine. And I was to go through the initiation, which then took me back to Africa a year later. And I went through this initiation where I was taken into the caves in Africa, was, it brings up emotion, was actually able to touch and meet the little people, the contumelies, the invisibles, which revealed themselves to me. And this is non-hallucinogenic. And then part of that journey of going to Africa was going to Ghana to go to the slave castles to make my offerings on behalf of my ancestors who did enslave 30 human beings in the Deep South, and made a lot of offerings there. So I've been really blessed, BJ. I've been really, really blessed to be able to have this opportunity. And
so you were able to reconciliate in a way by giving these offerings and to say, "I'm sorry."
Yes, yes. And it's an ongoing journey. It's an ongoing journey of reconciliation. But I am the first one of my family, my lineage, to really speak the names of each one of those that were enslaved, and to make my apologies and to make my offerings. And it's a commitment that I have every single day of my life to empower people of color, and not empower them, but to be supportive and to know that I contributed and my ancestors contributed to the plight of people of color, and it's my responsibility to make amends to that. So it's been quite a journey.
Thank you so much for the work that you do, Reda. It's just so beautiful to talk to you. I'd just like to say thank you very much for spending the time with us today. And I hope that one last thing that I just wanted to bring up was that BoneWoman's speaking, the story that you just related to us on the woman's journey was very prophetic in a lot of ways, wasn't it? Because I don't know the meanings of raven, but I'm interested in that, you know, what that means to you, and the bats as well, and what that means to you now with everything going on.
Interesting. Well, they're both, for me, creatures of the underworld and the other world, and they're both messengers of death. And you know, crow, raven can fly into the other world, bat flies at night, so they're messengers of the underworld. And you know, when I channeled that story, which I've gone back and looked at a lot of my writings, was that I knew what was coming, but you know, but we didn't know. So I think what's happening for me now, BJ, is that the animal spirits and the plant spirits and the nature spirits are talking really loud. And we have a great opportunity right now to listen in a way that we haven't been able to listen for a long time. The tree spirits, the star beings, like they're really talking loud. And it really is a great opportunity for us to be a voice for them. Like we humans need to take ourselves out of the center of it, of the story, and put all of these other voices back into the center and let that lead the way now.
Because everything was too noisy before.
Yeah.
We couldn't hear ourselves. We couldn't hear ourselves
Right.
think, literally, and to connect with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm. Well, thank you, Reda. We're going to close the circle now. Once again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for running through the technical side too this morning. And we're going to have a lot more stories from Reda. She's an amazing storyteller. Thank you so much. And I honour you very, very deeply. And thank you for your mentorship with me. And we will get together soon. So we're going to close the circle now. And on the count of 3, we're going to say, it is done, and clap our hands very, very fast together. 1, 2, 3. It is done. Thank you,